Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. In this episode of Ask PR, we're going to be talking about Avengers and the craze for it, which has been unparalleled since Baahubali, I guess. So, what makes that such a craze? Now, Madan says both Avengers Endgame and Baahubali share the same thing, heroism. This pulls audiences. Heroism movies must tell stories which emotionally resonate with audiences, which the above two movies did. But this isn't the case with many of our Masala movies. Is that true with your average Ajit, Vijay, Salman, whatever movies? There's a bit of the hero element there as well, right? I don't know. Maybe you're talking about a mythical level of heroism. Uh, I don't know because, but I agree with one thing that people are drawn to a very larger than life thing. I'll tell you what. Maybe this is what makes a difference, because Avengers and Bahubali set the heroism in a kind of a la la land. That is, it's mythical, right? So it's not real at all. So we just buy into it like little kids. It's like watching some Amar Chitra Katha kind of thing all over again. Whereas when the same heroism is happening in like a real life situation and grounded in the current political reality or whatever it is, maybe there is a bit of dissonance. I don't know, but I'd like to hear about this from you guys. Shruti Suresh says it should be like a well-written, long-format series. Every new episode brings in a new layer and arc to characters and narratives. Only then the franchise will hold. That's true, but we're talking about, will the audience interest sustain on the big screen? Like people invest in series, right? In like a multi-episode arc. Will they do the same thing over several movies? I don't know, because even when we talk about our franchises, let's say the Kanchana movies or the Bahubali is a two-movie thing, but let's say Singham, which they call it a franchise, it's basically the same thing dressed up in a new form. It's not really taking the narrative anywhere forward. So I think that should be more like a problem there. So maybe, if they treat the Singham movies like a series where at the end of part one something happens and then part two picks up from that and then something like that happens and things like that, maybe we can have something going on interesting instead of just having a new heroine and a new villain in each episode and just taking it forward. Shankar says, IMO, the plots of majority of our Masala films are ludicrously non-coherent and the characters involved are too shallow. This is why, yeah, I agree with this because I think a lot of them are very hastily written and we don't have writers. So, it's like basically seeing the same thing all over again. Whereas when you watch an Avengers kind of movie, everything kind of coheres. Even if you don't like the movie as a whole, there will be at least 10 or 15 scenes out of like 60, 75 that are entertaining, that deliver in terms of special effects, or maybe one guy is really good, or maybe somebody makes you cry or something like that. Even a quarter of the movie kind of works. You pretty much take home a fairly satisfactory feeling. Whereas out here you find that things are bloated and there are hero moments, and then the movie goes on for some 3 hours, and there's duets and things like that, and we don't get that satisfaction, I guess, sometimes of watching something, like you said, coherent. I think that's the main thing. Tyagarajan says, definitely I watch our Masala films, especially the big budget and star ones. Always am disappointed. What makes Avengers and all great is the writing and the craft and all the departments here is dumbed down. I agree with one thing. I never understand one thing. Why don't we want to give quality experience to our audience, right? Like we go to the theaters all the time. We support these stars. We support these filmmakers. In return, why don't they say, I want to give the audience the best possible special effects, the best possible writing, the best possible songs, the best possible scenes in terms of writing, like in the comedy or whatever it is. Why do they always settle for less when they can always go for more? I think it's a combination of many things, including the fact that a lot of these projects are very hastily put together. So they don't really have the time to develop them in the best possible manner. And at the end of the day, when you go there, you feel like you're being treated very callously, because is that what you think of us? Do you think this is enough for us? That's what you end up asking most of the time. Rahul B. Raj says, there is this frenzy because it is part of a franchise and not a standalone film. Bahubali 1 did not have an earth-shattering opening. It just grew over its positive word of mouth. In both cases, the finale is what creates the buzz. Yeah, I agree with that, because it's a franchise and it keeps growing from one movie to another. But what I mean is, we've seen several franchise films, right? Like we've seen, like, let's say Harry Potter, or we've seen other movies. I don't know, somehow even in India, I don't feel we are so pumped about the Harry Potter films or about the Star Wars films as much as the Avengers. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of us that wants to go and see them. But if you look at the grassroots level of popularity that Avengers has achieved, That's truly amazing, and that's what I'm talking about, more than the fact that it's a franchise itself. Vishnuvardhan says, I think the craze is mainly because the lack of superhero movies here. While our actors do ridiculous stunts anyway, heroes with superpowers open doors to whole new levels of badassery. Yes, and I also want to add that they choreograph their stunts very well, and here we just like have variation to the same dishim. We don't even think beyond that. And the second thing is their special effects are truly mind blowing. So I have gone and watched so many films. I make it a point to watch all these films, even though some of them I end up not liking them. I love the Ant-Man movies. I don't know, I find them very entertaining, and Paul Rudd is fantastic in those films. But even the lesser ones, like Doctor Strange, was kind of weird for me. But the special effects, where he goes from that dimension to dimension, so amazing that you're saying, I want to go and watch this on the big screen. That doesn't happen with our films. Mirror says Indian masala flicks don't essentially aim at establishing a franchise. We talked about that. Is the lack of world building required to establish a franchise a major factor here? Do we possess the patience, power, and passion? I think S.S. Rajamouli showed that we do have that patience, power, passion, all the three things that you said, because he took a lot of time to build that world for Bahubali and Bahubali 2. I don't know, maybe others don't have the patience, or maybe the heroes won't wait. Like Prabhas gave so many dates to Rajamouli, maybe our heroes won't do that because they just want to finish one project and then move on to the next and finish X number of movies. But I don't see why I mean, especially after the mega success of those two movies, I don't know why that model cannot be emulated like time and again. Arunachalam says, I don't think it has entirely begun. Masala films still rule the roost in this part of the world. It's because we try to make franchises out of premises that should not be franchised. What do you think? Yeah, I don't know. See, again, a franchise is, I don't know if we can use the word franchise for just movies that belong to the same, like Singham 1, Singham 2, Singham 3. Is it a franchise, or is it just sequels coming after another? Because something about the word franchise makes me, like, it's a very product kind of word, like a Subway franchise, a McDonald's franchise, because you kind of buy the rights from McDonald's to lease out like a little store, and you want to sell the exact same products that somebody else is doing. So it suggests a kind of cookie cutter approach to thing. Whereas when I say Avengers, I don't see that, yes, technically it's a franchise, but I see that as building on what came earlier. Something happens, then the next one builds on it, and the next one builds on it, and the next one builds on it. So you're not stuck in that same, it's not a cookie cutter thing at all. Whereas when you watch Singham 1, Singham 2, Singham 3, like I said before, all we do is replace the old villain with a new villain, replace the heroine, maybe bring in another heroine or something like that, and then basically you're running the same story. The Kanchana movies are especially like that because they are basically the same movie over and over again with just like little tweaks. It's not necessarily a bad thing because, as the James Bond films have shown us, that same model can be replicated with enough tweaks if the stunts are spectacular, the locations get different, the bonds themselves keep changing. There's so much of stuff that happens there that makes it so fun to watch. That doesn't happen in our films though. Shruti says, I really feel people watch Indian films with a pre-notion that they're going to be dumb. They think, not all Hollywood movies are good quality and not all Indian movies are cliched. Your thoughts? Yeah, that's true. I mean, Hollywood produces a lot of crap as well, but I think when they make a so-called bad movie, it's still watchable at a technical level, but when we make a bad movie, I think it really craps out and kind of becomes really bad. Anish Dhirej Das says, India needs more writers. Producers stop thinking quick money, invest in writers, then we as the audience should buy tickets of well-written movies. That's again the same thing. It's like we should invest more in writing because these universes, this world building doesn't happen on its own. If we laugh at certain lines in Avengers, if we are crying at certain scenes, it's because the writing makes us feel for these characters and they're not just, going and strutting about and, having a good time. So in the Iron Man movies, I remember I especially liked the banter with Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow because it's this very funny Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn kind of rapport going on there, and it was funny. I mean, I don't know why we can't get that kind of spark in our films, but again, the writing is to blame. Harish Shankar says, yes, I do prefer an Avengers over our Masala movie. I believe those Masala films are more connected to the actor more than the character, while in Avengers you're more attached to the character more than the actor. I don't even know the name of many of the actors. Wow. Okay, they're just some of the most famous actors on the planet, but yeah, I think I get your point. I think what you're saying is even if you're not familiar with Hollywood actors or, Hollywood films itself, you recognize Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and more than anything else, we go and see a Vijay movie as per your thing, whereas Here you're saying I go and see an Iron Man movie, not necessarily a Robert Downey Jr. movie. Fair enough. I think that might also be due to the lack of familiarity with the stars or whatever. Jack Durden says, I feel that Indian masala films take something from around our life and fantasize it. For example, we see a corrupt person in real life and we can't do anything about it in reality, whereas we can see the hero being a commoner like us and take down the mighty villain. The real deal is him or her being a commoner doing all this. Can the mass elements be matched by a superhero films where those guys have powers and there is at least some logic to why the superhero has powers? I agree, because that's one of the things about the Shankar model. Why it's so satisfying if done well is because you want people who are corrupt in the government and in other offices to pay for the corruption, and most of us are unable to do anything. So when an Indian Tata or whatever it is, Mudalvan, when a gentleman goes and does all these things, we kind of root for it because there's a kind of a satisfaction that somebody on screen, at least in a fictional movie, is doing what we cannot do in real life. And that can't happen in a superhero movie because those guys have superpowers. They're not like us. I mean, it's very cool for Superman to do something or Batman to do something, even though Batman technically doesn't have superpowers. But it's even though they can do that, we don't have that Batmobile, or we weren't born Krypton. So it's somehow more satisfying if done well to see our masala movies. I'll tell you, I'll take a movie like Mudalvan any day over a lot of the superhero movies in Hollywood because it's so well written, so well done. That satisfaction at the end of that one day CM and things like that, it's just like such a thrill. I don't know if I'll get a thrill from any average superhero movie like that. The special ones, yes, but Shiva says Avengers has its own masala, but in the writing too, it has its style. And after watching Endgame, you have a lonely feel and sad feel that we can't see them together again. Bahubali, we love the film to end, but Endgame, we never wanted it to be an end that was pure magical. Listen, I think we all know that when characters die on screen, there's always the possibility that they're going to come back in another movie, okay? They'll do something like they'll go back to another time or time zone, or somebody will go into the quantum realm and, fix something and bring them back or something like that. Really, I mean, come on. It's just because the Avengers have been disbanded, you think studios that know this movie can make. This is a movie that has made $1.1 billion in its first weekend worldwide. You really think that this band will never come together again? I'm going to bet on the fact that they do. So on that note, I'm going to end this episode of Ask BR. Thank you so much for your questions and keep them coming. We will see you in the next episode of Ask BR, and keep watching Film Companion South.